All right, everyone, it's time to begin with our next panel discussion, which is about embedded finance in e-commerce, personalized payments, powering global trade. And for the same, I would request the moderator, Mr. Shubhanga Prasad, co-founder and partner, London, UK, and Bengaluru, India at Agama Ventures. Let's have a huge round of applause, everybody, for Mr. Shubhanga Prasad. And now I would request our speaker, Mr. Rakesh Shembekar, Chief Strategy and Technology Officer, DGFT. Let's have a huge round of applause, everybody. Mr. Sandeep Chagger, Group COO at Peach Payments. And Mr. Vibhor Mundhada, Chief Executive Officer at NEOPAY. I would request the moderator to kindly begin the session, please.
Thank you. So we have an exciting 40 minutes, just given that probably amongst us we are representing 4 different geographies, and we hope to be able to kind of at least give our perspectives of how we are seeing. So during the course of the next 30 minutes, what we'll try and do is layer this into three segments. Talk a little bit more about each of our geographies itself. Vibhor comes from the Dubai and the Middle Eastern ecosystem. He's a veteran there, runs probably the largest payments company in Dubai. Sandeep comes from the African ecosystem. He lives in Mauritius, and is the CEO at probably one of the biggest payments ecosystem in the African region. And Rakesh comes from the Tokyo and the Japanese ecosystem, where they run a lot of things around payments. I don't run anything about payments, but I do kind of live in London and have experienced the UK ecosystem more as a customer. And I hope to kind of ask and learn from the veterans here in the payments industry about what's happening. So layer 1, help us start. I think maybe I'll start with you, Rakesh. I think I don't know much about the Japanese ecosystem. Start talking to us by explaining how payments happen in Japan. What are the kind of payment instruments that are there? What does e-commerce mean? And just let's understand the Japanese ecosystem itself to begin with. And feel free to also introduce your company and what you guys do as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Shubhanga. So I represent Digital Garage, which is, you can say, an internet pioneer in Japan. And from there, we have a payment arm, and that is DG Financial Technology. So in India, we have DGFT, more towards the regulators. So people are looking at me like, okay, are you from DGFT India, but not as DG Financial Technology. So what we do is we process, as you mentioned, payments in Japan. We can say we will, if you make a payment in Japan, there are chances that out of 10 payments, 3 payments will go through us. So we are doing payment aggregation, payment facilitation, as well as acquiring. So that is about my company and my group. Now, regarding the market, right? So when I was discussing before this panel, like I was feeling isolated because most of the people know each other. Even I was like, it's not about only that Japan is isolated in terms of payments and the network. It's like ecosystem itself. So Japan, as I mentioned, right, it's very closed loop network. Everything is, you can say, Japan-centric only. And so the payment landscape is also fragmented there. Most of the payments and all this fintech ecosystem works based on trust more than that of, you can say, the speed or the royalty. So like from the Japanese customer or the user point of view, it's more of a, you can say, the privacy that they care rather than the speed or loyalty that they are going to get out of this payment flow.
And so in the Japanese ecosystem, is it more of card-led payments that is actually more prevalent, or is it like in India, more bank-led payments? How does it happen?
Yeah, so I mean, like I think most of the geographies is around 60% credit card, and rest are other digital wallets and local payment types.
Wonderful. Moving to the west of India, Vibhor, help us understand what Dubai is in the news for everything. In fact, yesterday it was in big news in the London ecosystem because Revolut's founder decided to move where you're based. So what's happening in Dubai, and what is payments in Dubai?
Sure. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for having me here. So I'll take maybe 30 seconds to tell you what NEOPAY is. So NEOPAY is the second largest payments company in the UAE. So we are a very large merchant acquirer, close to 30% market share in merchant acquiring, and we do other stuff like embedded finance, issuer processing, wallets, etc. So that's what the scale and size of NEOPAY is. From a market perspective, I think the region, so I'll talk more about GCC as Sandeep is here to talk more about Africa, but if you see GCC, and we can start with the UAE. UAE, very unique market in terms of payment volume, very large payment volumes, almost reaching close to $150 billion annually. Market in terms of the split of payments, 25% payments naturally is cross-border given the value of UAE as a global trade hub. So, which then leads to a lot of innovation in terms of alternate payment methods, not just cards. So, we have been bringing in all kinds of alternate payment methods from all over the world into the UAE to power our merchants, the likes of WeChat Pay, Alipay. We are very proud of our UPI partnership. We were the first ones to bring in UPI into the UAE, and now that's becoming more and more a prevalent payment methods for consumers coming in from India to do transactions, right? If you look at strategic importance of the UAE, a large trading partner for India, almost $100 billion of trade with UAE. And if you consider GCC, which is UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the GCC countries, almost $170 billion of trade growing. A very, very interesting market for remittances. 40% of remittances comes through GCC. Again, almost $80 to $90 billion. So very, very strategic market from where India sits, right? Lastly, if you look at the split of payments, given the ubiquity of transactions and given the fact that a lot of transactions are cross-border, we still have 95, 96% transactions happening on cards, and the rest are happening through the alternate payment rails that I spoke about, right? So that's UAE. Saudi is, again, a country that's under transition. You have Vision 2030, where they have big ambitions across various segments, right? Manufacturing, fintech, tourism. So we see a lot of, work happening there in terms of what the regulator is trying to do, be it instant payments, domestic routing, wallets, a huge rise of digital banks, and economy, which is, from a population perspective, almost 4 or 5 times of the UAE, and the payment volume maybe 1.5 times already, right? So that's what's happening in the region. And UAE per se is, and Saudi, and to a large extent Bahrain, is becoming the hub for fintech. We were talking about it in at least that part of the world, right?
And from a volumes perspective, in the GCC, what part is UAE and Saudi?
So if you look at total payment volume, Saudi will be the highest. So Saudi will be close to 30-35%. You will be 20%, and the rest others in terms of.
And you're talking about, so when you say payments, we're talking about commerce-led payments.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm talking about not e-commerce-led payments. I'm talking about overall payments.
Okay.
But then similar trajectory will follow, given naturally the populations are so. And lastly, a little bit on regulations, very forward-looking regulations, right? If you look at the UAE central bank, like 3-4 years back, you couldn't run a payments company if you were not a bank. So in the UAE, there's a FIT program, which is allowing fintechs like ours to get independent licenses to do merchant acquiring, to do wallets. You talk about Revolut. Revolut got a license as a stored value facility in the UAE. They're starting off with that with a potential to move into digital banking. And similarly, Saudi Arabia, again, forward-looking regulation. And one last bit, very interesting for the topic today. Again, very forward-looking regulations in terms of open banking, which is fostering a lot of work on embedded finance, both on SME lending, buy now, pay later, insurtech, etc.
Amazing. Thank you, Vibhor. So Sandeep, help us demystify Africa for us. And you're having the unique, you're the first person I met who actually lives in Mauritius. I have only met funds which live in Mauritius.
He
So
parties every day.
good to know people live there too.
Yeah, I usually say that I went there for honeymoon and never came back to India. But yeah, more or less.
That's true, that's true.
You know, that was a timing. So it fell strategically well. Africa is something that we're also learning every day about, right? I mean, we operate a payments company called Peach Payments that's today operational in 9 countries, where we have physical presence across different African countries, and we are expanding through partners into some more African countries. So every country is unique and different, right? I mean, South Africa is a market where we started, which is card heavy, and diversifying into buy now, pay laters, EFTs, wallets, and so on and so forth. There's an instant payment ecosystem coming in South Africa called PayShap. Mauritius, again, card-heavy market, heavily banked population. Over 95% of the population, or even 99% of the population is banked. They've created next-generation instant payment ecosystem, right? That has seen good adoption. We're also present in Kenya. Now, Kenya was literally, I mean, I can say that it was a motherland of mobile money with M-Pesa, Safaricom, Vodacom, when it started. If you look at numbers, Kenya is a population of 58 million people, roughly, of which over 30 million people have an M-Pesa account. So they literally leapfrogged from cash to mobile money, skipped the entire card ecosystem to a great degree. We process payments in Kenya through our partners, and what we see is 80% of the transactions happen on M-Pesa. And the little that happens on card is usually when somebody is trying to book a hotel ticket or a flight ticket. We recently acquired a company in Francophone West Africa that's operational in 6 countries: Senegal, Ivory Coast, Benin, Togo, Burkina Faso, and Mali. Again, 90% of transactions happen over mobile money. Right, so this is a very interesting trend that we are seeing. There are some markets which are card heavy, slightly more evolved, where it went from cash to a banking infrastructure, and now they're trying to implement mobile money with more digital natives coming in. And there are some markets that have literally leapfrogged from cash directly to mobile money. And that is very interesting because, I mean, on mobile money, what we are seeing is there are more layers of products getting added. Right, and I was looking at stats, 2024, Africa mobile money payments crossed $1 trillion in terms of the volume of transactions that happened, right? And financial inclusion is at a is being implemented at a rapid pace, right? So, well, Africa you cannot generalize, but the common trend that we are seeing is this mobile money revolution that's happening across different countries of Africa, where the unbanked population is now getting banked, right? And those numbers are steadily increasing.
And, I live in London, and one of the things that in UK, of course, cards are extremely penetrated, although it was the kind of hotbed of open banking in some sense from an innovation point of view. FCA and the PSD2 norms kind of gave the kind of, birth of open payments in some sense. I don't need to carry cash in UK also, like very much in India. Of course, however, the rails on which we pay in India is obviously bank-to-bank, open banking led. But in UK, it is largely card led, and it is tap and pay everywhere. How is it in your geographies, in Japan, in Africa, and one line answer is good as well. And if you want to kind of just characterize a little more about how do people pay in your local geographies, especially when it comes to commerce and e-commerce related transactions.
Okay, so you mentioned about tap and pay, right? So I remember, right? So in Japan, I think Sony first introduced a technology called Felica somewhere in 2001. And that was the technology where you can tap and pay and go. That went commercialized somewhere in 2004. So for last 21 years, Japanese people are paying with tap and go. So in the first, the section you asked about the types of payment. So now it was credit card, then it was there, tap and go. Now it's now more about a QR code as well. So last I can say 5 years, that credit card percentage drastically dropped down from 80 to around 50, 60%.
Yeah, so for the UAE, again, young population, highest smartphone penetration in the world, pretty much 100% contactless enabled on merchants. So if you see, again, a very unique market, almost 95% transactions are contactless. Out of those 95, almost 90% are on XPays. By XPays, I mean the likes of Google Pay, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay. So very, very strong penetration of tap to pay. Why I say the remaining 5-6% doesn't happen, simply because 25% of the volume is cross-border, and a lot of markets lag behind in terms of ability to do transactions on phone. A similar story in Saudi, but more the volumes are routed through the domestic payment method called MADA. But again, affluent population, GCC is very affluent, so smartphone penetration terms is very high. What is happening now, like India, we have launched in the UAE an instant payment method called ANI. The central bank of the UAE, as part of the FIT program, is pushing that a lot. And we are working very closely, the country is working very closely with NPCI, NIPL on not just ANI, but the domestic payment scheme called Jevan. So we, today as ecosystem players, are trying to build use cases around QR code payments. I have a personal belief that to shift the user experience from a tap to pay by just pushing a payment method in a country like UAE won't work. We would rather go the Singapore route is what I believe in, where you had SGQR, irrespective of the fact that there was similar penetration, but use cases were built for taxis, for example, for corporate payments. So that's where we are focusing on to get ANI and instant payments going. So that's a little bit on the UAE.
If I can just, before going to Sandeep, if I can just ask, how important is the government backing for introducing any new type of payment payment form, I would say? And what have you felt because in India, of course, we have seen right from the polity to the regulator to the private players, the push behind UPI was unbelievable, right? And which is why more than 1 billion of us probably are using this every day. What do you see in your local markets? I think, Vibhor, one especially.
See, I think without focus from the top of from the government, it's very difficult to change user experience and move payment methods, right? For the UAE, do you need instant payments immediately, or do you need domestic routing immediately? The answer maybe it's a no. But what's happening globally, every country now wants to have a sovereign payment method, right? So for GCC, it is more important from the fact that this is country critical infrastructure, and that has to be hosted in-house rather than transactions going out. So if you see, the focus is coming right from the top. So, and at different places, right? Dubai
Saudi,
government
of course,
has
yeah,
a cashless initiative. The UAE federal government has a cashless initiative. So does Saudi. And then the UAE central bank has, as I said, the FIT program, where there's a continuous focus on getting these payment methods, which is instant payments, etc., onto the market, to the extent that it's coming right from the assistant governor's office to the bank CEOs, payment company CEOs. So I think the ecosystem has to then fall in line where the messaging comes from the top.
Absolutely.
And that's what is happening across the GCC. And we are participating because we see value across the chain, right? As a large merchant acquirer, my job is to open up as many payment options as I can. And when things like ANI, UPI, Alipay come on along with other payment methods, one, you give more choice to the merchant to manage the payments better, and you can build more use cases, especially on embedded finance, lending, etc.
And how is it in the African ecosystem?
Africa, I would say there are two types of markets. One is a slightly more evolved card-heavy market, where banking penetration is high. Then there are other countries where, the mobile money revolution took place. And mentioning about how government is actively contributing towards the same, I think India is a fantastic example. And a lot of countries in Africa are also following the footsteps or getting inspiration from the Indian story, right? What Visa did in 65 years, UPI did in 9 years, right? So that same level of transaction to achieve with government backing and push and acceleration, it definitely led to mass adoption across the country. Right now, if you look at Africa, now South Africa, again, card-heavy market. The government is trying to push on PayShap, but gradually it is progressing. Nigeria introduced NIBS, that's their instant payment switch. Ghana introduced a similar system called GIBS. Mauritius introduced MOCAS. So, these are disruptive solutions, right? Either private sector comes and penetrates where banking is low. So that's where private sector players have played a good role. But markets that are evolved and fairly developed, that government push is required because there's a shift, from your traditional card payments to more digital mobile-based payments.
Understood. Talking now a little more about the interaction that each of your regions has with India as a region. India does about $900 billion of trade every year globally. And of course, Dubai is a big market, Japan is a big market, Africa as a whole, of course, is a big market for us. And if you kind of remove oil and gold, precious metals from that 900 billion, we're still talking about a sizable $500 billion number. What are the kind of, especially when it comes to the cross-border trade that happens, where are you seeing both in the B2C and the B2B space, commerce-led payments emerging in your region's interaction with India? Do you want to start, Rakesh?
Yeah, sure. So this is first year for me at GFF, and I'm attending many panels, and I see the speed and everything, right? So India, when develops, it's more develops towards the scale. Whereas in Japan, it's more about the speed, not scalability, I will say, but the predictability, the reliability. So I think the innovation comes later, and the trust and everything come first. So that is how it is placed for Japan.
Got it. And if you were to talk a little more, Sandeep, from the perspective of importers who are kind of bringing, doing trade with Africa or export. I think there's a lot of exports that also happen into the African market, whether it is in pharma, whether it is in textiles, so on and so forth. Even now, I know for a fact that customs, because India is obviously not a fully capital convertible country, customs may even now, the things are in copies of 4, and it is still paper-led, a lot of it. Of course, a lot of customs processes have also now they've been digitized, but they're not digital inherently. What's your kind of utopian world wherein payments can actually happen with India, or from India to African business folks?
So Africa, most of the African countries are very similar to India in terms of exchange controls, highly restrictive. And there are few countries like, let's say, Mauritius, Seychelles, where there's ease of exchange control that exists. At the same time, what we are seeing is that a lot of the global companies are going direct to consumer into Africa. It's 1.4 billion people in Africa, 1.4 billion people roughly in India as well. So these are big consumer bases. We are seeing Shein, companies like Shein, Temu from China, selling aggressively into the African continent, and they're going direct to consumer, right? And what are they trying to do is they're trying to connect the last mile rails in terms of the local payment methods, right? And we are also facilitating some of those payments, and we are seeing a trend, that direct to consumer trend shifting. India has done fantastically well in the D2C market locally, and it's gradually going international as well. But when do you connect with the local consumer in any market? When you offer the local payment method, right? If let's say any brand coming out of India is selling into Kenya and the Kenyan consumer is able to use M-Pesa to pay for that product out of India, you localize, you form a connect with the local consumer in some way or the other. You're showing the transaction in local Kenyan shilling and the consumer can pay, right? Similar, we can do in many African countries. Now, NPCI is doing a fantastic job. I saw Nehal here, who's spearheading the Africa initiative. They're actively talking to different governments, regulatory bodies into Africa and private players to take UPI acceptance into Africa, right? What that means is the Indian consumer can buy products and services from African merchants, different parts of Africa, and pay in INR, right? What it does is it creates that brand identity or some sort of a promotional activity of those African products into the Indian market. You know, we saw that at the Eiffel Tower. You know, I mean, we can pay with the UPI app, right? And that in some way or the other has seen some increase in terms of the number of people going to the Eiffel Tower, right? Because you feel a local connect that I can, you know, whether it's Google Pay, Phone Pay, Bharat Pay, I can open the app and I can pay in INR to go to the Eiffel Tower, right? So I mean, similar trend we are hoping for into the African market, mainly in the tourism space. So yeah, I mean that's a trend that we are looking at.
While the mic comes up, you can pay on Burj Khalifa at the top as well on NEOPAY terminals on UPI. And it's been live for a year now. So please go in, use our terminals, play in INR. Very cool campaign, thanks to the NPCI team is running today at Dubai airports, where we are talking about paying on UPI in Dubai. So
Amazing.
So you
I'm
can
going to be there in Dubai.
practice in the Middle East and then come to Africa.
So you are again keeping Japan aside.
No, I think you spoke beautifully about the Indian consumer and how they can actually get connected when they are traveling outside. But I think India today, when we say India is booming, it is actually the new age entrepreneurs who are actually kind of, you know, tapping not just the Indian market, but they're actually tapping 30 million of us who are sitting outside India, pretty much wanting to essentially kind of connect with the Indian businesses, right, or D2C brands. Think about healthcare, skincare, or even if it is textiles side of the equation. There are a lot of Indian brands that are emerging that is tapping into the outside customer. However, at the end of the day, the ease of actually collections from the business's standpoint still remains a challenge. PayPal obviously seems to be the natural go-to, but clearly it's not cheap in any sense. So how do you see for Indian businesses which are actually looking to tap into the global, not just Indians, but the global audience in some sense, for the products that are being built here? Because there's a huge government push around Made in India anyway. Having Made in India, how do we get paid easily enough? You know, and what are your thoughts there, Vibhor, if you want to kind of talk?
See, I think a lot of problems of Indian consumers going to merchants and driving commerce, like Sandeep has spoken about, is being solved phenomenally well by NPCI, right? UPI is everywhere, right? It's at Eiffel Tower, it's at Burj Khalifa, it's going to Africa, it's already live on Singapore, right? On the other side, my belief is the same rails can actually be used in collection of money from people who are diaspora, people like us who live outside to do transactions. And some of that work has already started. If you see PayPal, while PayPal is, and the CEO was here yesterday, and NPCI did sign a very landmark agreement in my opinion, and he was all around the region, right? So multiple agreements signed were opening up of payment methods like UPI onto PayPal. I think that's game changer, right? Because it's not just for Indian consumers to start paying on PayPal, but the same rails potentially with the right controls can be used on converting those dollar transactions back into rupee and being pushed back through the UPI rails. It's just an extension of the remittance use case. So I think a lot of work is happening there. These reciprocatory agreements with acquirers, banks, where banks are connecting for remittances with instant payment methods, right? ANI is connected into UPI, right? The Jaiwan card scheme relies pretty much on the NPCI spec.
I think today it solves for the people who want to pay in INR in some sense, but people who want to pay in
if the rails are there, you could actually replicate that. Is all I'm saying.
Is
because
that
you have
underway?
a payment method like if I'm paying in ANI, for example, and buying something from a merchant's who is based out of India. That was happening through PayPal, and RBI had OP GSP acts, etc. But then if ANI and UPI are connected, it's a remittance use case in the end, right? You have a Nostro account there where you are collecting in dollars and you are remitting it back into INR with the right controls. So when these interoperability rails are built, technically you can do it both ways. And that's what I think is happening today.
And so when it comes to embedded finance as a thought process, and obviously, when you guys are thinking about, embedded finance use cases for brands that are actually kind of looking at, what are the things that they should be looking forward to come this year, come 2026, from each of your kind of, vantage points?
So for embedded finance, right? So I think
Sorry, before you start, I mean, think about it from an Indian audience standpoint. Brands which are actually kind of looking outside, what are the embedded finance use cases / products that we as entrepreneurs here in India should be kind of looking forward to tap into audience in your markets?
so you mean the business that want to sell something
Absolutely.
in overseas
Outside India,
market?
exporters from here.
Right. Okay. So I think from Japan perspective, right? So it's I think opposite where more the Japanese are trying
import
to towards more. So maybe it's
Maybe
more,
Sandeep, if you want to kind of take that.
Broad-based opportunities exist in solving for supply chain finance. As an example, we discussed trade finance, in one of our conversations. So that can be digitized in a proper way, and payment companies can become a channel for that, right? What I can think of is tax payments in another way that can be integrated into the payment ecosystem. Your duty payments when you're exporting, importing, even direct to consumer, when you're doing, it's either paid at the merchant level or at the logistics player level. That can be fully integrated. Delivery companies can be aggregated, on your e-commerce platforms, as an example. The other example, one very practical example that we are trying to implement, and we've implemented locally, whether it's NEOPAY or any payment company or Peach Payments, right? You have the list of alternate payment methods that exist in each country. It can be your card-based payment. Beyond your card-based payment methods, you've got buy now, pay laters, you've got EFT payments, you've got your Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, and so on and so forth, right? You've got your M-Pesa in Kenya. So if Indian exporters can sell to the local market and the local consumer can pay, or local business can pay using the local payment methods, I think you've solved a big problem in terms of localizing. And this is the model that UPI is also driving, by taking UPI global beyond India, right? And I feel this is a model that many countries can emulate, to increase and enhance that bilateral trade gradually. So that's a good starting point as
Amazing.
We see it.
Any thoughts, Vibhor, from your side?
See, I think embedded finance more and more cannot be separated from payments is my view, right? The value for us as payment companies who are providing options to merchants, it's no longer, something that is being thought and spoken about in presentations. It's happening every day, right? It could be something as easy as, embedding multiple payment options to do transactions like, Sandeep has spoken about, or, the power at the merchant is becoming very, very critical, be it online and offline, right? The computing power in the hands of the consumer is becoming very big. So consumer solutions like, embedded lending, I would not say buy now, pay later, but embedded lending, which is becoming very, very important for markets like the UAE, for example. You have multi-billion-dollar unicorns that are being set up regionally, the likes of Tabby, Tamara, which are actually changing the way consumers transact in the UAE. And these businesses are doing well, right? If you look at some of them standalone, they would now, in my opinion, become top 5 or 6 card issuers in these countries, right? So that's happening on the consumer side. Similarly, with the data that's available and, the ability to underwrite, SME loans embedded for merchants is becoming very critical for us. It's a big play for most of the payments companies all over the world. In the UK, people have been doing it for a long time, Square Capital, etc. Right? PayPal has ventured into it. We also want to do it. And for two clear reasons, I think and this has been spoken about in multiple forums, micro SMEs and are not looked at by banks, right? In a country like UAE, banks won't look at $1 million dirham or less, right? That's where we play, right? Where you can say that you can do short ticket, short tenor loans, backed by better underwriting using data, by daily amortization because you know the cash flows you collect every day. So, those are the kind of products that are present most places, but I think especially for our region, if I say, a lot of private credit has started to come in over the past couple of years. So it becomes very easy for people like us to distribute that private credit.
I think for us in the London ecosystem, I think embedded insurance is also something that is very
embedded insurance.
As part of the trade itself. But I'm going to pause there.
Embedded insurance, buy now, pay later on insurance premium, that's becoming very big.
And I think embedding insurance as part of commerce itself is something that is largely taking off, definitely in the UK market. And we're seeing in India as well. I happen to see folks like Discovery, Simbo, and others who are trying to do that.
Right. I mean, you mentioned about embedded insurance, right? So is it about like while a user paying on e-commerce, you get that part
and that is actually being embedded as part of the trade that is happening on a brand's platform, let's say.
Yeah, so just one point about the trust and that insurance point you mentioned. So whenever some Japanese consumer buying on any e-commerce website, so he always get that option of insurance along with that electronic gadget he is buying. So he don't have to go and check the terms and condition each and every time. He can just select whether he wants 1 or 2 years. So that's a trust factor. Yeah.
And I think it's very prevalent in the local markets. I would love to see some of those actually happening in the cross-border. So if I'm actually buying, I don't know, a travel ticket from Dubai, I don't think I'll be covered yet from a Dubai insurance company as a non-Dubai resident. So
you can actually. Some of the travel aggregators are building those.
Correct. So those are some of the, I think, cross-border use cases which I think we are going to start seeing. But I'm going to pause here. We are about 4 minutes away from closure. If there are any audience questions, maybe we can take 2. And I would request you to limit your responses for less than a minute. Go for it.
We can hear you, sir. You can.
So the question for to Vibhor and I think Sandeep also. So you talked about that Indian customer can go and pay at Burj Khalifa, right? So I wanted to understand that how easy is for a person who is not aware about it to get. So it is like mentioned there that you can pay, or it's just like a UPI QR code. Right? How is it visible?
So it is exactly similar to what you do in India. So it's a UPI QR code that comes out, integrated into our smart terminals, and there's a lot of awareness that's being created by us there, right? So you will see pay by UPI. We are running, Ritesh is here, I see him, we are running campaigns with PhonePe. We were the first ones, they were the first ones to come onto the platform. So we are running campaigns both in India, wallet issuers in India. Plus, as I said, there are campaigns running today on Dubai airport in partnership with NPCI, where if you go into Dubai today, you will see big banners, pay with UPI. So that's the kind of awareness we are building, and we are seeing that shift already from cards into UPI QR. See, it's a journey, right? Yeah. And my belief is that it's just a matter of time. Now the terminals are ready, not just us. We are the second largest. The largest merchant acquirer is ready. Now I think we would have almost 85% acceptance of UPI. So it's a chicken and egg, right? You have issuing, but you don't have acceptance. Now we have reached at the right number.
Typically here, if you see the QR code has a PhonePe, something
similar there. Similar. You can use 5 or 6 wallets today and growing.
No, but just mentioning UPI, or should I be kind of telling that I want to pay in INR, so then that is where they will.
So we do both. So some campaigns talk about wallets, some campaign talks about UPI. Again, we are fighting for the merchant space. As I said, 25% volume is cross-border. I accept at least 20 payment methods, unlike India. So we need to manage that through communication and tactically looking at which season, which merchant, and how do we do that.
Sandeep, any?
Just to add to it, one is, of course, when a consumer is paying, they'll always see the option that you have the option of paying with the UPI-based app. For consumers that don't know that you can pay at this merchant, I think NPCI is doing a great job, and we have the country's key brand advocate of UPI, that's the Prime Minister of ours, Honorable Mr. Modi. So even when UPI partnered with one of the payments player in Europe to enable payments on the Eiffel Tower, I don't know how many times our Prime Minister mentioned about the same, right? So there's definitely a great push right from the top, right? And we are seeing that in action in whichever country that the UPI is being enabled.
I think we can take one more question.
Hi, I'm Dhananjay. I'm the founder of Ledger Labs. So even we do cross-border payments, but on the UPI push for international transactions, one of the major questions that I had was, so India is a QR economy. Brazil has PIX, which is also a QR economy. But Europe and USA have been card economies since a while, right? UAE has been sort of both cash, card, now even UPI. So how do you see this evolve in Europe as well as USA? Like Dubai pickup has been pretty good. Paris, Eiffel Tower pe payments ho rahe, but of course shops mein nahi hai integrated. So what do you guys think about that?
I'll tell you from a UK perspective, and this is more as a consumer, I'm not a practitioner. I think QR more than QR, I think it's about bank-led payments or card rail-led payments. I think that's how I kind of look at it. Fundamentally, the convenience that is present in a tap and pay is going to far outweigh doing a QR code led. There are, however, startups in the UK as well, which is running on the open payments led rails. In fact, one of the Indian founders actually is doing a company there called A2A Payments. And they're doing reasonably well, especially in the small transaction space. But when you look at it from an overall market standpoint, I think the volumes doesn't dictate they're nowhere near what it is here in India. I think the idea will be how do we kind of enable tap and pay kind of methodologies on the open payments network, or think about if UPI were to become tap and pay, what would that look like, is where we need to probably solve. I think technology exists. It is about taking that route. At least in the UK, I think that's what I feel. But if you want to add,
Just to add, so the heavily banked population, wherever it exists, the resistance to change is higher, right? We operate in South Africa, which is a card-heavy market. To move them to an instant payment ecosystem is tougher because they're used to, there's a habit that they're using card everywhere, or Apple Pay, Google Pay everywhere, which is also card-enabled. Now, Europe created PSD2 way before a lot of the African countries did, but the adoption is a lot slower, and they're spending millions of dollars, to create that awareness and education. But again, that resistance to change exists. Same is in US as well. Now, what we are seeing in Africa, the unbanked population is moving to mobile money or QR-based systems much faster because, they were used to cash before that. Now they're used to digital money in some way or the other. So, these are two maybe spectrums, or two different segments that are being catered from different payment mechanisms, and there's different behavior. And there will be a slow process, where transformation will happen gradually.
Any final thoughts, Vibhor?
We are running short of time.
Amazing.
So thank you very much.
So Vibhor, Sandeep and Rakesh, thank you so much. You've been an amazing audience. My name is Shubhanga, and from me and my AI assistant, by the way, this is GFF's first AI theme. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the speakers and the moderator. Requesting you to come ahead, please, for a group picture.